The biting chill of an unexpected late-night downpour on Interstate 5 was instantly forgotten as Elias Thorne, his hands instinctively gripping the custom steering wheel of his heavily modified Ford E350 Extended, witnessed the unfolding chaos. Ahead, a sudden hydroplane had transformed the highway into a mangled accordion of steel and shattered glass. Vehicles piled high, some teetering precariously, others leaking dark, viscous fluids onto the slick asphalt. Sirens wailed in the distant city, still agonizing minutes away. This was his zone, the space between official response and desperate need. With a practiced swiftness, Elias engaged the multi-directional scene lights mounted discreetly along his van's reinforced roof rack, transforming the immediate vicinity into an illuminated oasis amidst the storm's oppressive darkness. His vehicle, a muted charcoal gray, was a deceptive beast. From the outside, it might have been mistaken for an oversized contractor's van, but inside, it was a meticulously organized mobile command center, medical bay, and specialized rescue unit. He didn't wait for permission. A quick scan with the deployable thermal drone, launched from a discreet compartment on his roof, confirmed the worst. An overturned sedan, its undercarriage sparking ominously, with a faint heat signature trapped within. Got movement, trapped, occupant, likely fuel leak. Critical, he muttered into his secure comms, more for self-confirmation than external report, as he pulled his van into a tactical position, its heavy-duty suspension barely registering the uneven shoulder. Donning thick, fire-resistant gloves, he grabbed a specialized hydraulic spreader from a neatly organized rack, the faint gleam of its polished steel reflecting the emergency lights. He moved with a dancer's precision amidst the wreckage, a man utterly at peace in the heart of chaos. He stabilized a precarious SUV that threatened to crush the sedan further. Then, with calculated force, pried open a twisted door, revealing a young woman, dazed and bleeding, her leg pinned. His voice, calm and steady, cut through the rain and the groans of stressed metal. "I'm Elias. You're safe now." Just a few more seconds, he worked with an almost surgical grace, applying a tourniquet, administering pain relief from a compact, insulated medical kit, and preparing her for extraction. His movements economical, every action serving a critical purpose. By the time the first official emergency vehicles roared into view, their lights painting the scene in urgent reds and blues, Elias had already secured the victim, stabilized the immediate hazard, and was quietly retracting his drone and stowing his gear. He exchanged a brief, understanding nod with the fire chief, a silent acknowledgement of his unique role, before easing his powerful van away from the scene, blending back into the stream of emergency traffic. His job done, the adrenaline began its slow fade as Elias drove towards the structured peace of Harmony Ridge Estates, his suburban sanctuary. The chaos of the highway melted into the meticulously manicured lawns, identical mailboxes, and perfectly pruned hedges that defined his HOA community. Here, every house looked much like his own modest but impeccably maintained single-story dwelling, a testament to the HOA's relentless pursuit of aesthetic uniformity. He parked his E350 in his driveway, its utilitarian bulk a subtle counterpoint to the suburban serenity, quickly engaging its internal air filtration system to cycle out the faint smell of oil and burnt rubber that clung to his gear. Inside, his house was as orderly as his van, a place for everything, and everything in its place. He moved through his routine, checking the diagnostics on his comm system, restocking the first aid kits, wiping down the hydraulic tools. He did this work, this unsung, often unseen, emergency response, not for glory or pay, but from a profound sense of duty, a quiet conviction that someone had to bridge the gap when official systems were strained. Harmony Ridge offered him respite, a calm counterpoint to the raw urgency of his calls, and he valued its peace above all else. A few days later, the calm was subtly disturbed. Among the usual stack of junk mail and utility bills, a stiff, cream-colored envelope bearing the embossed crest of the Harmony Ridge Homeowners Association caught his eye. His brow furrowed slightly, he'd been a model resident. Tearing it open, his eyes scanned the formal, impersonal prose until they landed on the bolded phrase, Violation Notice, Article 4, Section 3B, Prohibition of Commercial Vehicles. The letter sternly informed him that his large, undesignated vehicle was deemed a commercial vehicle, in direct violation of community covenants, and demanded its immediate removal from his driveway, or its storage in an enclosed garage within 5 business days. Elias scoffed, a wry, almost amused smile playing on his lips. Commercial. He just pulled a family from a burning wreck, and this was the concern. He mentally drafted a polite, logical email explaining the specialized, non-commercial nature of his unit, confident that common sense would prevail over bureaucratic overreach. As he tossed the offending notice onto his kitchen counter, he caught a fleeting movement in his peripheral vision. Mrs. Henderson, his notorious, curtain-twitching neighbor from across the street, quickly retracting her head from her living room window. A subtle shiver, unconnected to the weather, traced his spine. Days bled into a week, the HOA deadline looming, but Elias's focus was elsewhere. Weather reports grew increasingly dire, predicting a severe cold front colliding with a powerful, low-pressure system, a volatile mix that screamed tornado watch for the greater metropolitan area. He spent hours meticulously double-checking his vehicle's severe weather protocols, topping off fuel, ensuring every piece of equipment was secure and charged. The air grew heavy, charged with an unsettling presence, just as the HOA's arbitrary 5-day grace period effectively expired. The heavens opened. Not just rain, but a terrifying symphony of wind and hail, accompanied by the ominous wail of tornado sirens cutting through the night. The lights in Elias's house flickered violently, then died, plunging him into a sudden, inky blackness save for the emergency glow of his own internal systems. His secure phone buzzed, a frantic, desperate call from old Mrs. Albright, 3 streets over, her voice trembling. Elias. My roof, it's gone, and my husband, he's trapped in the basement. I can't. The phone lines are down. No one's answering. The words hit him like a physical blow. The official emergency services would be overwhelmed, stretched thin, perhaps, even blocked by fallen trees and downed lines. His specialized unit, built for exactly this kind of chaos, was Harmony Ridge's only immediate hope. His eyes flickered from the dark window, where the storm raged, to the HOA violation notice still lying on his counter, its stark wording mocking the very notion of rules in the face of such raw, immediate peril. With a grim set to his jaw, he crumpled the notice in his hand, a silent but defiant declaration. This wasn't about commercial vehicles or petty regulations. It was about human lives. He strode to his specialized van, threw open the door, and with the roar of its powerful engine echoing through the storm-swept darkness, Elias Thorne, his commercial emergency unit, pulled out of his driveway and into the heart of the tempest, leaving the HOA's empty threat swallowed by the night. The roaring tempest outside Elias's van was a symphony of chaos, a stark contrast to the pinpoint focus within as he navigated the flooded, debris-strewn streets of Harmony Ridge. Trees had splintered like matchsticks, power lines sank dangerously across driveways, and the air itself seemed to vibrate with the storm's raw power. Old Mrs. Albright's frantic call echoed in his mind, and his destination, just 3 blocks away, felt like an eternity. His E350, designed for such conditions, plowed through standing water, its reinforced undercarriage deflecting branches that would have crippled a lesser vehicle. Inside, the navigation screen, powered by an independent generator, showed a live feed from a weather radar, overlaid with the fastest route. By passing downed obstacles Elias himself was marking on the fly. He activated the high-intensity LED light bar mounted just above the windshield, cutting a brilliant swath through the torrential rain, illuminating twisted mailboxes and upturned trash cans. The van's sophisticated internal gyroscopic stabilizers kept it surprisingly steady, allowing him to monitor vital signs on a small, integrated display, not his own, but a remote sensor. he deployed earlier near a known elderly resident's home, a precaution against this very scenario. The vitals were stable, but he knew the fragility of such moments. As he rounded a corner, a massive oak lay sprawled across the main road, its branches tearing at the asphalt. Elias didn't hesitate. He engaged the van's front-mounted winch, securing the heavy-duty cable around the trunk, and with a low growl of the engine, slowly but surely began to shift the colossal obstruction, his tires digging for purchase on the wet pavement. He was drenched within seconds, but the cold rain was a welcome slap of reality. He wasn't just moving a tree. He was clearing the only viable path to Mrs. Albright's house, and potentially to others in this isolated pocket of the neighborhood. The process was painstakingly slow, every muscle in his body protesting, but he pushed through, fueled by the urgency of Mrs. Albright's distress call. Just as the tree shifted enough to create a narrow, passable gap, a sharp, insistent ring sliced through the din of the storm, not from his secure emergency line, but his personal cell phone. He glanced at the caller ID, a chill replacing the rain's cold bite. Harmony Ridge HOA. Gerald Finch. Finch was the HOA president, a man whose meticulously combed hair and perfectly pressed polo shirts were as rigid as the rules he so zealously enforced. Elias almost ignored it, but a flicker of intuition, or perhaps just exasperation, made him answer, tucking the phone against his ear with a wet shoulder. "Thorne, what in blazes do you think you're doing?" Finch's voice, surprisingly clear given the storm, was a high-pitched, indignant squawk. "I'm watching you from my window. That monstrous vehicle is tearing up the asphalt, and it's past the deadline. You are in direct violation of Community Covenants, Article 4, Section 3B, and now, I presume, Section 2A regarding property damage. Cease and desist immediately. This is an official warning. Elias, the board will not tolerate this flagrant disrespect." Elias gritted his teeth, his grip tightening on the winch remote. "Gerald, are you serious? There's a tornado watch. Power's out. And Mrs. Albright needs help. My vehicle is an emergency unit. I'm moving a tree to get to her." He could hear the desperate edge in his own voice, the absurdity of the situation almost comical if it weren't so dire. "Emergency unit. Poppycock. It's an unauthorized commercial vehicle. You have no authorization from the HOA to conduct rescue operations on private property, which, I remind you, this street is. This is a residential community, not a disaster zone. If you cause any damage, you will be held personally liable. I've already alerted the authorities about your unauthorized activities." Finch's voice was rising, laced with an almost maniacal adherence to procedure. Elias stared at his muddied boots, the rain plastering his hair to his forehead. He could hear the faint, distant crackle of a two-way radio on Finch's end, likely a self-appointed neighborhood watch reporting on him. The sheer, unadulterated lunacy of it stole his breath. He was literally battling a natural disaster, trying to save a life, and the biggest obstacle wasn't the storm, but the petty despot of the HOA. "Gerald, lives are at stake," he said, his voice slow, controlled, every word a struggle against a rising tide of fury. "If you don't back off, and something happens to Mrs. Albright because of your interference, that's on you." He didn't wait for a response, slamming the phone shut and tossing it onto the passenger seat, the screen already cracked from the impact. He finally muscled the oak just enough to squeeze his van through, the side mirrors scraping against rough bark. Driving down Mrs. Albright Street, the scene was even worse than he'd anticipated. A large section of her roof was indeed gone, peeled back like a sardine can lid, exposing her attic to the elements. Water cascaded down the remaining walls, and the front door hung askew. He quickly parked, engaging the van's independent power supply to run critical systems and light up the immediate area around the house. He grabbed his specialized search and rescue kit, a compact backpack containing everything from heavy-duty cutting tools to a collapsible stretcher. As he approached the front door, A figure emerged from the driving rain, a tall, gaunt man holding a large, white umbrella that seemed comically out of place in the maelstrom. It was Gerald Finch, his face a mask of furious indignation, his perfect polo shirt now plastered to his chest. He was flanked by two other equally drenched HOA board members, Mrs. Higgins, a stern woman with pursed lips, and Mr. Davies, whose eyes darted nervously between the storm and Finch's enraged face. "Thorne, I told you to stop," Finch bellowed over the wind, pointing a trembling finger at the van. "That monstrosity is ruining the pristine appearance of our neighborhood. And now you're trespassing. We have called the police. They are on their way to remove you and your vehicle." Elias felt a cold dread mix with a burning rage. The police, in this storm, when people were trapped. He could hear a faint, distressed cry from within Mrs. Albright's house. The stakes had just multiplied exponentially. He couldn't afford to be delayed. Not now, not for a moment. He looked at Finch, then at the damaged house, then back at his van, a beacon of hope in the darkness. "Get out of my way, Gerald," Elias said, his voice flat, devoid of emotion, a dangerous edge to it. "There's a woman trapped inside, and if you or your board try to stop me, you'll be directly responsible for whatever happens to her." He pushed past them, not waiting for a response, the frantic cries from inside the house growing louder, pulling him towards the real emergency, leaving the HOA's absurd demands to swirl like leaves in the wind behind him. Every second mattered. The aftermath of the storm laid bare the fragile veneer of Harmony Ridge Estates. While power crews worked tirelessly to restore electricity and clear major thoroughfares, the pockets hardest hit, like Mrs. Albright Street, remained dark and isolated. Elias, having successfully extricated Mr. Albright and provided crucial first aid to both elderly residents before official paramedics arrived, had spent the remainder of the night and the following day tirelessly assisting other trapped or stranded neighbors. His specialized E350, once an object of quiet suspicion, was now a visible, indispensable hub of activity. He used its powerful lights to illuminate homes without power, its satellite internet to connect frantic residents to emergency services or worried relatives, and its medical bay to treat minor injuries. Children, previously wary, now approached the big gray van with wide-eyed wonder, watching Elias distribute emergency blankets and bottled water from its compartments. Neighbors, who had previously only offered polite nods, now brought him hot coffee and sandwiches, their gratitude evident in their tired eyes. The absurdity of the HOA's earlier threats, in contrast to Elias's selfless actions, was becoming glaringly apparent to the community. Gerald Finch, however, remained unswayed. 2 days after the storm, as Elias was helping a family clear debris from their yard, a pristine, white HOA notice was affixed to his windshield, secured under a wiper blade. This one wasn't just a violation, it was a formal summons to an emergency HOA board meeting to be held that very evening. The agenda, prominently displayed, listed immediate action regarding non-compliant vehicle and property damage as its primary point, implicitly framing Elias as the problem, not the solution. Elias sighed, the weariness in his bones eclipsing any anger. He had been hoping to catch a few hours of sleep, but he knew this meeting was unavoidable. He also knew he wouldn't be going alone. Calls had been circulating amongst the neighbors, word spreading like wildfire about Finch's obstinacy. The community clubhouse, usually a sterile, rarely used venue for quarterly updates, buzzed with an unprecedented energy that evening. Every seat was taken, and a crowd spilled out into the lobby. Elias walked in, his clothes still smelling faintly of damp earth and exhaustion, and was met with a ripple of murmurs that quickly swelled into supportive greetings. Several neighbors nodded approvingly, a few even clapped softly. Mrs. Albright, frail but resolute, was seated in the front row, clutching her husband's hand, her gaze fixed on Elias. Gerald Finch, flanked by Mrs. Higgins and Mr. Davies, sat at the head table, his face a tight mask of indignation. A local reporter, Sarah Jenkins, from the Harmony Ridge Gazette, was conspicuously present, furiously scribbling in a notepad, her cameraman setting up in the back. Social media had done its work. The story of the heroic neighbor and the tyrannical HOA was gaining traction. Finch tapped the microphone, a sharp, irritating sound. "Order, order, please," he shrilled, his voice barely containing his thinly veiled fury. Thank you all for attending this urgent session of the Harmony Ridge Homeowners Association. We are here tonight to address a grave and ongoing violation of our community's cherished covenants, one that has caused significant property damage and disruption. He gestured dramatically towards Elias, who stood patiently near the back. Mr. Thorne's oversized and clearly commercial vehicle continues to occupy his driveway, despite repeated warnings, and was yesterday observed engaging in unauthorized activities, including tree removal and operating what appears to be an illegal medical clinic, causing further damage to our shared infrastructure. A collective gasp, then an angry murmur, rippled through the room. "Illegal medical clinic," someone shouted. "He saved Mrs. Albright's life," another voice boomed. Finch ignored them, pushing a stack of glossy photos forward on the table. Pictures of Elias's van pulling the oak, its scene lights activated. "As you can see, this vehicle is not only an eyesore but a threat to our property values and the very fabric of our community's regulations. We propose an immediate fine, a lien on his property if necessary, and the forced impoundment of the vehicle until compliance is achieved." The room erupted. "That's outrageous. He helped us. Our power was out for 2 days. Where were you?" Gerald of voices clamored, a wave of frustrated indignation washing over the board. Mrs. Albright slowly, painstakingly, stood up, her voice surprisingly strong. "Mr. Finch, if it weren't for Elias and his van, my husband would not be here today." The official help didn't come for hours. Elias was the emergency unit. "He pulled a tree off our street. He gave us power. He treated my husband. How dare you call that a violation?" Her words carried immense weight, silencing the room, a testament to her recent ordeal. Elias stepped forward, his gaze fixed on Finch. "Gerald, please. Let's be rational. My vehicle is designed for specialized emergency response. It's equipped with search and rescue gear, medical supplies, and independent power. It's registered as a private, non-commercial emergency support vehicle. I volunteer my time. During the storm, when official services were swamped, it allowed me to assist our neighbors, some of whom were in critical situations. Is our community's safety less important than a regulation about vehicle aesthetics?" Finch, visibly flustered by the overwhelming public sentiment, jabbed a finger at Elias. "Ignorance of the rules is no excuse. This is a slippery slope, Mr. Thorne. If we allow one specialized vehicle, where does it end? Our rules are in place for a reason, to maintain order and property values. You are an individual, not a city service. And what about community responsibility?" A neighbor, a burly man named Mark, who Elias had helped secure his collapsing fence, interjected, his voice powerful. "When the tornado hit, and the city couldn't get to us, Elias was there. His van was the only light, the only help. Are we just supposed to wait for rules to be satisfied while our houses crumble and our families are in danger? He's a hero, Finch, not a rule breaker." The cameraman from the Harmony Ridge Gazette subtly adjusted his lens, focusing tightly on Finch's increasingly agitated face. Sarah Jenkins scribbled furiously. The debate had exploded beyond the confines of the clubhouse. Phones were out, neighbors recording, live streaming the chaos to local Facebook groups. The story was no longer just about a van. It was a microcosm of rules versus compassion, bureaucracy versus humanity. Elias saw the shifting tide. The community, once passive, was now fully engaged, their outrage palpable. He felt a surge of resolve. He wasn't just defending his vehicle anymore. He was defending the right to help, the spirit of neighborly aid that Finch's rigid rules threatened to extinguish. He stepped to the microphone, his voice calm but firm. "I understand rules are important, Mr. Finch, but there's a difference between maintaining order and becoming an impediment to safety and well-being. My vehicle is not for profit, it's for people, and I will continue to use it to help anyone in this community who needs it, storm or no storm, HOA or no HOA, because some things are bigger than bylaws." His words hung in the air, a challenge, a promise. The room, for the first time, was completely silent, the weight of his conviction settling upon them. The immediate aftermath of the HOA meeting was a whirlwind. News of the heated confrontation, fueled by neighbor live streams and Sarah Jenkins's diligent reporting in the Harmony Ridge Gazette, exploded across local social media and community forums. The Harmony Ridge HOA, once an unchallenged authority, found itself under an unprecedented public microscope. Phone calls, emails, and even physical letters flooded Finch's office, overwhelmingly in support of Elias. Many were from residents who had quietly suffered under the HOA's arbitrary rules for years, now emboldened to speak out. Others were from concerned citizens outside the community, appalled by the perceived heartlessness of the board. Internally, the board was in disarray. Mr. Davies, the nervous board member, started visibly cracking under the pressure. At an emergency closed-door meeting the day after the public uproar, he voiced his deep discomfort. "Gerald, this is a disaster. My phone hasn't stopped ringing. People are threatening to withhold dues, demanding a recall vote. Mrs. Albright's family is talking to a lawyer. We look like monsters." Mrs. Higgins, usually Finch's staunchest ally, remained stony-faced, but unusually quiet, her gaze often drifting to a framed photo of her own elderly mother on her desk. Finch, however, remained rigid, doubling down on his stance. "This is precisely what agitators like Thorne want. They want to dismantle order, to erode our property values. We must stand firm. If we yield, we open the floodgates," he accused Davies of being weak and Higgins of wavering, further fracturing the already strained alliance. For Elias, the public support was a mixed blessing. While heartwarming, it also intensified the HOA's focus on him. Finch, feeling cornered, escalated his tactics. The first came in the form of a notice of intent to impound for his E350, delivered by a grim-faced process server. It stated that if the vehicle was not removed from his driveway within 48 hours, it would be towed and impounded at his expense, with daily storage fees accruing. Finch was using the letter of the law to punish Elias, knowing full well Elias had no garage large enough for the van, and moving it off his property would severely hamper his ability to respond to future emergencies. The second challenge was more insidious. Elias's internet access, which ran through the HOA's community-wide network, became inexplicably sluggish, then unreliable, making it difficult to maintain critical weather updates and communication protocols. Then, a few days later, a cryptic, seemingly official notice from the city planning department appeared on his door, questioning the structural integrity of his driveway due to the excessive weight of his vehicle, despite its heavy-duty design. Finch was clearly pulling strings, using his connections to create obstacles. The pressure began to mount. Elias was accustomed to physical dangers, but this bureaucratic warfare was a new kind of exhausting. He spent hours researching HOA laws, trying to find a loophole, a legal precedent, anything. He knew he was right, but the legal system moved slowly, and Finch was moving fast. He couldn't afford to lose access to his van, especially with the storm season still in full swing. One evening, as he sat hunched over his laptop, poring over legal documents, a soft knock came at his door. He opened it to find Eleanor Vance, a quiet, unassuming woman in her late 60s who lived 2 houses down. Eleanor was known for her immaculate rose garden and her reclusive nature. She carried a small, worn leather-bound book. "Elias," she began, her voice a soft murmur, I heard what Mr. Finch is doing. It's truly shameful. I wanted to help." Elias, surprised, invited her in. Eleanor sat on his sofa, her gaze fixed on his powerful van visible through the living room window. "I've lived in Harmony Ridge since it was first developed," she started, her voice gaining a surprising firmness. "I was one of the first residents, before the HOA was even formally established. And I know Gerald Finch better than most, I think." She paused, her eyes distant. "Gerald's rigidity, it's not just about rules. It's about control. He's never gotten over what happened with the Oak Creek disaster years ago." Elias leaned forward. "Oak Creek? I'm not familiar with it. It was about 15 years ago," Eleanor explained, opening her worn book. It was an old HOA meeting minutes ledger, dating back decades. "Harmony Ridge was still new. We had a flash flood, much worse than your recent storm. Oak Creek, the small creek running through the undeveloped part of our community, overflowed its banks. Homes, including Finch's own, were damaged. The community called for help, for sandbags, for emergency supplies, for coordinated action. But the original HOA board at the time, a very loose, informal group, was paralyzed. They spent critical hours debating who was responsible for what, whether it was commercial activity to bring in heavy equipment to clear the creek. They valued procedure over urgency, just like Gerald is doing now." She pointed to a faded entry. "Gerald Finch was a rising star on that board. He pushed for immediate, unauthorized action, for an exception to the rules to save homes, but he was outvoted. The board insisted on formal processes, on waiting for permits and official city resources. By the time they finally authorized action, it was too late. Many homes, including Gerald's basement, were severely flooded. People lost trust in the HOA. There was a huge backlash. The original board was forced to resign." Eleanor looked up, her gaze steady. "Gerald took it personally. He saw what happened as a failure of lax rules and disorganized leadership. He campaigned on a platform of strict adherence, of ironclad bylaws to prevent chaos ever again. He became obsessed with control, with ensuring every detail was micromanaged, believing that if every rule was followed to the letter, no disaster, no deviation, could ever occur. He genuinely believes he's protecting the community by enforcing every single rule, no matter the circumstance. Your vehicle, Elias, represents the very chaos and unauthorized action he fought against during Oak Creek. It's not just a commercial vehicle to him. It's a symbol of everything he despises, a breakdown of his cherished order." Elias absorbed this, a chilling understanding dawning. Finch's obstinacy wasn't just petty. It was rooted in a deep-seated trauma and a distorted sense of duty. He wasn't malicious, perhaps, but dangerously rigid. "So, what can we do?" Elias asked, seeing a glimmer of hope. Eleanor smiled faintly, producing a crisp, neatly folded document from the book. "This is a copy of the original Harmony Ridge Community Charter, adopted before the current HOA bylaws were fully codified. Buried deep within it, in Section 7C, there's a clause. It states that in the event of a declared local emergency or state of disaster, specific community assets, including private resources deemed vital for immediate life-saving aid, can be temporarily exempt from certain commercial vehicle restrictions and property use regulations, provided they are nonprofit and publicly serving." It's a relic from a different time, when the community was less formalized, more about neighbor helping neighbor. Most people, especially Gerald, wouldn't even know it exists because the current bylaws largely supersede it. But it was never formally repealed, and, she added, her eyes twinkling, "I know a good constitutional lawyer who specialized in property law and loves a good fight against overreaching HOAs. She owes me a favor from a particularly nasty rose garden dispute." Elias felt a surge of adrenaline, not from a crisis, but from a newfound hope. Eleanor, the quiet gardener, had just handed him a legal lifeline, a powerful weapon against Finch's bureaucratic onslaught, rooted in the very history of Harmony Ridge itself. The fight was far from over, but now, Elias had an unexpected ally and a strategy to counter the HOA's relentless pressure. The tension in the Harmony Ridge Community Clubhouse was thick enough to cut with a knife. This wasn't just another HOA meeting, it was the culmination of weeks of escalating conflict, public outcry, and a quiet, meticulously planned legal counteroffensive. Every seat was packed, with residents standing shoulder to shoulder, spilling out the doors. Local news crews, a larger contingent this time, jostled for position, their cameras trained on the head table where Gerald Finch sat, his face pale, but still stubbornly defiant, flanked by a noticeably anxious Mr. Davies and a grim-faced Mrs. Higgins. Elias stood beside Eleanor Vance and a sharp, impeccably dressed woman Elias knew to be her lawyer, Ms. Evelyn Reed, both radiating a quiet confidence. Finch began, his voice strained. "We are here tonight to discuss the proposed amendments to our community bylaws, specifically concerning Article 4, Section 3B, which prohibits commercial vehicles within Harmony Ridge. The board, after extensive, heated deliberation, has decided to present a motion for a community-wide vote." He avoided eye contact with Elias, his gaze sweeping over the restless crowd. He then launched into a lengthy, defensive preamble, reciting the HOA's historical commitment to property values and order, attempting to frame the proposed change as a regrettable, forced concession rather than a genuine shift. Ms. Reed, however, wasn't having it. When Finch finally paused for breath, she calmly stepped forward. "Thank you, Mr. Finch. While the board's proposed amendment is a welcome, albeit belated, step, it addresses only one aspect of the issue. The real question before this community, as has become abundantly clear, is not merely about a vehicle. It's about the spirit of these bylaws. My client, Mr. Elias Thorne, and indeed, the very fabric of this community, has been unduly burdened by an interpretation of rules that prioritized rigid adherence over human safety and common sense." She then delivered her precise, legal thrust. "Mr. Finch, I believe you are aware that Mr. Thorne, with Ms. Vance's invaluable assistance, has recently brought to light a critical, unrepealed clause in the original Harmony Ridge Community Charter, Section 7C. This clause explicitly permits the temporary exemption of private, nonprofit, life-saving resources during declared emergencies, overriding any conflicting subsequent bylaws. Furthermore, we have compiled overwhelming evidence, including extensive neighbor testimonies, social media footage, and the Harmony Ridge Gazette's excellent reporting, demonstrating Mr. Thorne's indispensable service during the recent storm. A clearly declared local emergency." Ms. Reed paused for effect, letting her words sink in. "Therefore, while we appreciate the proposed amendment, we are here tonight not just to vote on a cosmetic change, but to demand a fundamental reevaluation of how this HOA operates. We also have a formal petition, signed by over 80% of property owners, requesting a vote of no confidence in the current board leadership, and a mandate for a complete review of all restrictive covenants to ensure they serve, rather than hinder, the community's well-being." A collective gasp swept through the room, followed by a roar of approval. Finch's face, already pale, went ashen. Mr. Davies visibly slumped in his chair. Mrs. Higgins, however, finally spoke, her voice surprisingly clear. "Gerald," she said, her tone weary, "we can't fight this. The charter is clear. The community has spoken. We tried to warn you." She turned to the audience. "I move to accept Ms. Reed's petition for a vote of no confidence and a comprehensive bylaws review." Her words, coming from within the board itself, shattered Finch's last vestiges of control. The vote was swift and decisive. Overwhelmingly, the community voted no confidence in the current board, effectively removing Finch and his remaining allies. A provisional committee, spearheaded by Eleanor Vance and Mark, the neighbor Elias had helped, was immediately formed. to oversee the bylaws review and organize new board elections. Finch, defeated, rose from his seat, muttering something inaudible before striding out of the clubhouse, his rigid posture finally broken. In the weeks that followed, Harmony Ridge underwent a quiet, yet profound transformation. The Emergency Bylaws Review Committee, working with Elias and Ms. Reed, drafted clear, common-sense amendments. Article 4, Section 3B was reworded to specifically exempt bona fide, privately owned, non-commercial emergency response vehicles like Elias's, provided they registered their intent with the HOA and adhered to safety standards. Other overly restrictive rules, such as those governing minor landscaping changes and children's play equipment, were also loosened. The long-term impact on Elias was significant. He was no longer the quiet, almost reclusive figure he became, a respected, integral part of the Harmony Ridge community. Neighbors regularly stopped by to thank him, to offer help, or just to chat. His E350, once a source of suspicion, was now affectionately known as the Harmony Ridge Guardian, a symbol of their collective resilience and newfound common sense. Children would wave excitedly when he drove past, and Mrs. Albright would send him freshly baked cookies. He began holding informal community workshops, teaching basic first aid and disaster preparedness, using his van as a mobile classroom. He still responded to external calls, but now, he also felt a deeper connection to his own community, knowing they truly supported his mission. The Harmony Ridge Homeowners Association itself shifted dramatically. In the new elections, Eleanor Vance was voted in as the new president, bringing an empathetic, community-first approach. The new board focused on collaborative problem-solving rather than rigid enforcement, fostering a true sense of belonging and mutual aid. The commercial vehicle dispute had, paradoxically, brought the community closer, forging bonds that transcended meticulously mowed lawns and uniform mailboxes. It was a powerful lesson learned that while rules were necessary for order, they must always serve the greater good, that compassion and common sense must ultimately prevail over rigid dogma. Elias Thorne, the quiet man with the commercial emergency unit, had not just saved lives. He had inadvertently sparked a revolution in his own backyard, transforming a sterile collection of houses into a true, vibrant community, forever valuing human need above any printed rule.